Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 28th. Today we are reading together in 2 Kings chapter 14. 2 Kings chapter 14. Hope that your Thursday is going well so far. Let me get the text of 2 Kings 14 up on the screen so we can read along together here today. Get a little Bible reading in here and learn a little bit more about the kings of Judah and Israel, and kind of some of their interactions that they had with each other. Unfortunately, it's not just that these two, we'll call them halves, even though they're not equal halves. It's not just that these two parts of Israel were separated from one another. We're going to see here in chapter 14 something that was referenced in chapter 13, that they actually fought against each other. There were a couple of times, we remember back in the history of Israel and Judah, in which Yahweh prevented there being civil war. Well, here, unfortunately, we're going to see that actually being the case, them fighting against each other and inflicting serious damage to one another. Let's read about that here in 2 Kings 14 and verse number 1. 2 Kings 14, verse number 1, in the second year of Israel's king Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in Yahweh's sight, but not like his ancestor David. He did everything his father Joash had done, yet the high places were not taken away, and the people continued sacrificing and burning incense on the high places. As soon as the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, Amaziah killed his servants, who had killed his father the king. However, he did not put the children of the killers to death, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, where Yahweh commanded, fathers are not to be put to death because of their children, and children are not to be put to death because of their fathers. Instead, each one will be put to death for his own sin. Amaziah killed 10,000 Edomites in Salt Valley. He took Selah in battle and called it Joktheel, which is still its name today. Amaziah then sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, and challenged him, "Come, let's meet face to face." King Jehoash of Israel sent word to King Amaziah of Judah, saying, "The thistle in Lebanon once sent a message to the cedar in Lebanon, saying, 'Give your daughter to my son as a wife.' Then a wild animal in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thistle. You have indeed defeated Edom, and you have become, and you have become overconfident. Enjoy your glory and stay at home. Why should you stir up trouble, such trouble that you fall, you and Judah with you?" But Amaziah would not listen. So King Jehoash of Israel advanced, and he and King Amaziah of Judah met face to face at Beth Shemesh, that belonged to Judah. Judah was routed before Israel, and each man fled to his own tent. King Jehoash of Israel captured Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, son of Ahaziah, at Beth Shemesh. Then Jehoash went to Jerusalem and broke down 200 yards of Jerusalem's wall from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. He took all the silver and gold, all the articles found in Yahweh's temple and in the treasuries of the king's palace, and some hostages. Then he returned to Samaria. The rest of the events of Jehoash's reign, along with his accomplishments, his might, and how he waged war against King Amaziah of Judah, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. His son Jeroboam became king in his place. Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, lived 15 years after the death of Israel's king Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz. The rest of the events of Amaziah's reign are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. A conspiracy was formed against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. However, men were sent after him to Lachish, and they put him to death there. They carried him back on horses, and he was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. After Amaziah, the king rested with his ancestors. Azariah rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah. In the 15th year of Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. He did not turn away from all the sins Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He restored Israel's border from Lebo Hamath as far as the Sea of the Arabah, according to the word Yahweh, the God of Israel, had spoken through his servant, the prophet Jonah, son of Amittai, from Gath Hepher. For Yahweh saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter for both slaves and free people. There was no one to help Israel. Yahweh had not said he would blot out the name of Israel under heaven, so he delivered them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. The rest of the events of Jeroboam's reign, along with all his accomplishments, the power he had waged war, or the power he had to wage war, and how he recovered for Israel Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. Jeroboam rested with his ancestors, the kings of Israel. His son Zechariah became king in his place. And that is the reading of 2 Kings chapter 14. 2 Kings 14. So remember at the end of, or back in, I should say, back in the text of chapter 12, at the end of chapter 12, we see where Joash was conspired against and how he had two of his servants that actually end up killing him. Well, interestingly enough, which this is kind of strange, you would think that if there is an assassination against the king, that there would be someone sitting there ready to usurp the throne. Well, that didn't happen. They killed the king, but his son still became king in his place. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Well, it is until you think about the fact that Yahweh is preserving the lineage of David. That seems to me to be what's going on here, is that even if evil men might take out the one who currently sits on the throne, Yahweh is going to make sure that the one that's supposed to be there ends up making it there. And that seems to be Amaziah. And for the most part, Amaziah was a good king. He was good, but not great. He was good, but not great. He did good things like his father had done, but he was not to the level of greatness that was King David. Everyone, it seems, from Judah is compared in some way, shape, or form to David. They might have been good, but they were not as good, as great as David. It seems to be that Amaziah's fault was the fact that he allowed the high places to continue to be used by the people within the land to offer worship, instead of making what might have been, what might have taken a bit of effort to get Jerusalem to worship there. He had just allowed them to offer these sacrifices on the high places, to offer convenient worship, and that was not pleasing to God. But even with that being the case, we see that Amaziah, again, had good things going for him. One of the things that he did that was good is that those who had killed his father, he did not take that punishment on the entire family. He only killed those responsible. He did this according, the text tells us, to the stipulations within the law of Moses, that fathers don't need to pay for the sins of the children, and children don't need to pay for the sins of their father. This is good. This was using wise discernment to handle this situation in accordance with the stipulations within the law of Moses. He also had success on the battlefield. On the battlefield, he was able to kill 10,000 Edomites in the Salt Valley. But it seems that this victory, the success that he had, went to his head a little bit in the fact that he then tried to take on Israel. Now, again, there's some further details in the Chronicles that I'm not going to deal with here, just because I want to allow the Chronicles to stand on their own. But there were some other issues going on with Amaziah. But it seems that the writer of Kings here wants us to focus in on the pride, because that's what King Jehoash, that's why he focuses in on. He says this little parable about the thistles, and then he says, you have indeed defeated Edom. That's good. Good for you. And you have become overconfident. Enjoy your victory. Enjoy the success that you currently have. Don't get too big for your britches. Don't take a bite off more than you can chew. It seems that that's what Amaziah is doing here. He warns him, but Amaziah, he presses forward, and it causes for Judah to suffer defeat at the hands of Israel. Now, that might be a little strange for us. Why would God allow for the bad portion of the Jews, being Israel, to have success over the more favored, better portion of the Jews that was Judah? Well, because he expected better from Judah, it seems. He expected for them to be more faithful. And the fact that they weren't, they were going to suffer this punishment because of it, because of the sins of Amaziah, because of his pride and arrogance. And again, the things are mentioned in Chronicles, paganism. He had gone after some other gods. Because of that, God allowed them to be defeated by their just equally as wicked brothers to the north. And how sad it is for that to be the reality. But again, God will use even wicked people to chastise and correct those whom he expects more from. He expected better from Judah. They had a better track record. No, they weren't perfect, but they had a better track record. And because of that, God expected great things from them. And they unfortunately did not live up to it. And they suffered for it here in this instance. Now, verses 15 and 16 are almost a complete repetition from what we see back in chapter 13 in verses 12 and 13. But it seems maybe this is a contrast. It is restated here to contrast the difference between the end of Jehoash's reign and the end of Amaziah's reign. For Jehoash, he was able just to rest with his fathers. He seemed to die of natural causes. But for Amaziah, another conspiracy was formed against him, and he fled to Lachish, but people found him there, and they killed him as well. Again, why? Why would the northern king have an easier end or more peaceful end than the southern king? Well, again, it seems to be that God expected more from these kings of Judah, because they had better precedents, they had better lessons to learn from the previous kings. Because they didn't do that, unfortunately, we see a violent, sad end for Amaziah here. But for Amaziah, then the king, the throne of the king, the crown is passed on to Azariah, and we'll see him more in the next chapter. But after the death of Jehoash, his son Jeroboam becomes king, and unsurprisingly, he did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he had caused Israel to commit. So his namesake, it seems, he continued going in the same direction, again, offering paganistic worship of Yahweh, both at Dan and Bethel with the golden calves, because that he did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. But again, he still experienced some success. He was able to restore the borders of Israel. And he did this according to the word. Notice that Yahweh, the God of Israel, had spoken through his servant, the prophet Jonah. Most people believe this is Jonah, the prophet who has a text named after him that tells his story later on in the Old Testament. The guy that was swallowed by the big fish, that pitched a fit about God taking away his shade because I deserve that. The whole thing with Nineveh. This seems to be the same Jonah. Many people believe this to be the same man. So it's cool to me to see those prophets mentioned later on, finding a little bit of the historical context here within the narrative portion, within the historical narrative portion of Israel that we find here in 1st, 2nd Kings and 1st, 2nd Chronicles. Even with this being Israel, and even with them having a track record of not doing what is right, again, God being so gracious, so merciful, and so patient, he saw the affliction. This verse 26, he saw the affliction of Israel. He saw that it was bitter for both the slaves and the free people. There was no one to help Israel, and Yahweh had said that he had not said he would blot out the name of Israel under heaven. Remember, he preserving this remnant, and it's still his people. He still loves them. So what did he do? He sent them to be delivered by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Nahash. Again, wicked king, yes, but God can use even wicked kings to bless his people. And that basically tells us the end here in chapter 14, says the rest of everything that Jeroboam did during his reign, his accomplishments, the power he had to wage war, how he had recovered Israel, Damascus, and Hamath. These things that belong to Judah, interestingly enough. All these things are written in historical writings. And after he died, his son Zechariah ends up coming into power in Israel, in the northern portion of Israel. So here within this text, then we see Amaziah going on to Azariah, and we see Amaziah's faults. We see Jehoash going to Jeroboam, and we see all of their faults. But specifically, again, just think about Azariah. Think about Amaziah. Think about him and the fact that God blessed him abundantly to have this success over Edom. And we see him even again following the law and the stipulations of it concerning the punishment of those who had done wrong by his father. But with these successes and with these good things, there needed to be continued faithfulness. Unfortunately, based on what we have here in the text with the arrogance and pride and what we see in Chronicles, he didn't maintain that faithfulness. And that's a lesson for us. Again, we cannot allow some good things we have done in the past, faithfulness we've shown in the past. We cannot allow successes that we are experiencing to cause us to lose focus and to start thinking, oh man, look at everything I've done. Look how great I am. No. It's all about God's greatness. It's all about his name being glorified through our faithfulness. May we never lose sight of that. And may we use the examples of these kings to remember it's all about God, all about his strength, and all about our faithfulness to glorify his name. If you have any questions about this text here in 2 Kings 14, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me today. Hope I'll see you again tomorrow as we read together in 1 Kings chapter 15. And I believe on Saturday, we actually have a catch-up day. So we'll knock out chapter 15 tomorrow. And if you're behind it all or need to do some extra reading, you can do that on Saturday. Again, thanks for tuning in today, everyone. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Take care and God bless.